Fleet Commander Vale Thon of the 7th Dominion had broken 14 species. He had watched them beg. He had watched them bargain. He had watched civilizations older than his homeworld offer everything. Their technology, their history, their children, in exchange for one more generation of existence. None of them had ever smiled. The human was smiling. He sat across the interrogation table with his wrists bound in molecular restraints, his colony destroyed behind him, his fleet reduced to debris orbiting a dead moon, and he was smiling like a man who had just remembered something funny. Vale Thon leaned forward. "You understand," he said slowly, "that you are the last one." The human looked up. His eyes were calm, patient, the eyes of something that had already decided how this ended. "I know," he said. He didn't stop smiling. "This is the official record of Commander Vale Thon, 7th Dominion Fleet Command, regarding the engagement at human designation Colony 7, for those who come after, and there will be those who come after. I want the record to be accurate. We did not expect resistance. That was our first mistake. Colony 7 was a frontier settlement, 12,000 inhabitants, agricultural output, minimal military presence. The intelligence reports had been clear. The humans who lived there were farmers, engineers, families. They had 3 outdated patrol vessels and a defense grid designed for meteor deflection. We had 40 warships. The engagement lasted 11 minutes. That was faster than projected. I remember thinking, as the last patrol vessel broke apart on our view screens, that this was almost too easy. I remember thinking that. I want the record to reflect that I thought that, so that whoever reads this understands. We were not incompetent. We were not careless. We were simply wrong about what we were fighting. The colony's evacuation signal had gone out 14 hours before we arrived. We knew this. Our analysts dismissed it. Colonies always sent evacuation signals when the Dominion fleet appeared. It was panic. It was instinct. It meant nothing. They weren't evacuating. They were clearing the stage. We lost our first ship 20 minutes after the colony fell, a debris field that shouldn't have been there. Our navigator called it an accident. Wreckage from our own bombardment drifting into an unexpected formation. We lost our second ship an hour later. By the third, I had stopped calling them accidents, but by then it was already too late. We found him in the agricultural district, alone. Every other human had evacuated, 14 hours they'd had to run, and 12,000 people had used every second of it to disappear into the dark. Not a single body, not a single civilian casualty, just empty buildings, empty streets, and the quiet hum of systems running on automated timers. And one man. He was sitting in the colony's main communications hub, surrounded by active terminals, eating what our analysts later identified as a nutrient bar. When our soldiers entered, he put down the bar. He raised his hands. He said, in perfect Dominion standard, "I've been waiting for you." My intelligence officer wanted to execute him immediately. I should have listened. Instead, I saw an opportunity. A human willing to talk. In the ruins of a freshly conquered colony, with full access to whatever communications had been transmitted in the final hours before our arrival. I had him transferred to my ship. I had him placed in our finest interrogation suite, which, I should note for the record, was significantly more comfortable than most of our crew quarters. The humans had a reputation for being difficult under duress. I wanted him comfortable. I wanted him cooperative. He was cooperative. That was our second mistake. He answered every question, every single one. Fleet positions, he gave them. Colony defenses across the sector, he gave them. Supply routes, communication frequencies, the locations of 3 other human settlements we hadn't yet identified. He gave them all. My intelligence officers were ecstatic. I watched them work and felt something I could not name. Not suspicion, not fear, something quieter. The feeling you get when a locked door opens too easily. He never asked for anything, never bargained, never demanded we spare a life or protect a particular person. He simply answered each question, waited for the next one, and looked at us with those calm, patient eyes. On the third day, I went to see him myself. He was asleep when I arrived. I had him woken. He sat up without complaint, without confusion, like a man who had gone to sleep knowing exactly when he would be woken, and by whom. "You've been very helpful," I said. "I know," he said. "Why?" He tilted his head slightly. The smile again. Smaller this time, more private, like he was sharing a joke only he knew the punchline to. "Because you asked nicely," he said. I had him return to his cell. I went back to my command deck and stared at the intelligence reports for 4 hours. Something was wrong. I could not find it. Everything checked out. Our analysts had verified and cross-referenced every piece of information he'd given us. It was accurate. We'd confirmed 3 data points independently through our own scouts. The supply routes were real. The communication frequencies worked. He hadn't lied, not once. I spent that entire night asking myself why that made me more afraid. On the 4th day, Lieutenant Commander Sarah brought me the compiled intelligence report. It was thorough, organized, precisely formatted. She laid it on my desk with the quiet pride of someone who has done exceptional work and knows it. I read the first page, then the second. Then I stopped. "Sarah," I said, "when was the last time an enemy gave us this much information voluntarily?" She considered it. "Never, Commander." "And when was the last time every piece of that information pointed to the same location?" She looked back at the report. Her expression shifted. The information was accurate. We had confirmed that. But there was a pattern we had missed, because we were too busy verifying individual data points to look at them together. Every route, every position, every settlement location and supply cache and communication node. They all funneled. They created, without any single piece of information doing it alone, a picture of one place. Colony 7, not the ruins of it, not the wreckage we had made of it. Something underneath it, something the bombardment hadn't touched because it had been buried 300 meters below the surface. Buried for reasons our initial scans had marked as geological formations of no strategic significance. I ordered a deep scan of the colony site immediately. The results took 40 minutes. I have been in Fleet Command for 22 years. I have seen things that broke lesser officers. I have read reports from the edge of explored space about entities and phenomena that we still cannot explain. I have never felt fear the way I felt it in those 40 minutes. The scan came back. The geological formations were not geological. They were infrastructure, human-built, precisely constructed. A network of tunnels, chambers, and what our analysts identified, slowly, disbelievingly, cross-referencing their findings 3 times before submitting the report, as weapon systems. Not small ones, the kind of weapon systems you build when you know exactly where the enemy is going to be standing. I called for a full fleet withdrawal, immediate, all ships, all positions, retreat to the jump point, and the communications array went offline, all of it. Simultaneously, not damaged, not destroyed, shut down. There is a difference. I know the difference. I went to my command deck. My crew was already at battle stations, already scanning, already trying to restore communications. On every screen, at every station, the same thing. Nothing. No incoming fire, no attack, no threat that any sensor could identify, just silence. And then, from the communications array that had just been shut down, the one that should have been completely offline, a single signal, not from outside the ship, from the human cell. We pulled the transmission. It was not a distress call. I want to be very clear about this for the record. Human distress calls follow a standard format: identification, location, nature of emergency, request for assistance. We had intercepted hundreds of them. We knew exactly what they sounded like. This was not that. It was a recording, a woman's voice, calm and precise, reading numbers in standard. Not random numbers, not code, a countdown. I did not understand it at first, neither did my crew. We stood on the command deck and listened to a woman count downward from an undisclosed starting point, and none of us moved, because none of us could make sense of what we were hearing. And then Sarah said very quietly, "Commander, the colony." I looked at the scan readout. The colony site was active. Not the ruins, not the wreckage, the infrastructure beneath it, the tunnels, the chambers, the weapon systems we had not known were there, all of it coming online. Section by section. Systematically, in sequence, like something waking up. I ordered the evacuation. I screamed it. Every ship, emergency jump protocols. Get us out of this system right now. The human's voice came over the ship-wide comm, not the recording. His voice, live. You left the comm relay active in my cell, he said. Third panel from the left. Did you know humans can pull a relay from a housing with their teeth if their hands are bound? I did not know that. I've been watching your scans, he said. I want you to know, the colony was never here, not really. We built the settlement on top of the installation 6 years ago, specifically so that when you came, you'd see a colony. You'd fight the colony, you'd win the colony, and you'd stay long enough to receive the intelligence debrief. The countdown was at 47 seconds. The evacuation signal, 14 hours before your arrival, that wasn't panic. That was the last civilians clearing out of the blast radius. 31 seconds. Every answer I gave you was designed to hold you in this system for exactly 96 hours. Long enough for 3 things to happen. 20 seconds. First, long enough to confirm your fleet composition and exact position, 15. Second, long enough for the recall signal to bring back every ship we pulled out of this sector before you arrived. 10. I looked at the tactical display, the dark space around us. The space we had cleared 4 times, the space we had been certain was empty, was no longer dark. 9, 8, 7. Human ships, hundreds of them. Arranged with a precision that told me they had known exactly where each of my ships would be. Down to the kilometer. 6, 5. Third, the human said. 4, 3. Long enough for you to be standing exactly here when we turned the installation back on. 2, 1. I want the record to show that in that final second, I did not feel anger. I did not feel fear. I felt something I had never felt in 22 years of fleet command. I felt impressed. This is the remainder of Commander Thon's official record, transcribed from the recovered vessel Black Box by Captain Mira Osei, 3rd Human Rapid Response Fleet. 4 hours after the conclusion of the Colony 7 operation, 34 Dominion vessels were disabled in the engagement, 6 were destroyed. Commander Thon and his crew survived and were taken into custody. Human casualties, 0. The human officer held in Commander Thon's custody was Lieutenant Daniel Reyes, 7th Intelligence Division, Earth Defense Command. His mission brief was classified under Operation Last Light. For those in the intelligence community who review this record, the outline of the operation was as follows. Colony 7 was not a colony. It had never been intended to be one. The agricultural output was real. 12,000 people had genuinely lived and worked there for 6 years. That part was not a lie. They were volunteers. Every single one of them had signed on knowing that one day, when the Dominion came, they would pack their lives into evacuation ships in the middle of the night and disappear into the dark, so that what they had built could be used for what it was always meant for. They weren't civilians, they were bait. And the man the Dominion had spent 96 hours interrogating, the man who had answered every question, who had smiled across an alien interrogation table with his hands bound and his colony burning behind him. He wasn't a survivor, he was the trap. Lieutenant Reyes's debrief on record. The Dominion's mistake was thinking we were defending that colony. We weren't. We'd already written it off. We were defending the 72 settlements behind it. To do that, we needed to destroy 40 warships without losing anyone. You can't do that in a fair fight.
I was afraid. I was afraid.
When asked what had kept him steady, he thought about it for a moment. I knew what the signal meant. When I heard the countdown start, I knew everyone was out. Everyone made it. After that, everything else was just math. There is a note at the bottom of Commander Thon's official record, added in his own hand after transcription. The Dominion High Command has since requested analysis on the Colony 7 engagement. They want to understand what went wrong. They want a tactical breakdown, a systematic failure report, a list of errors that can be identified, catalogued, and corrected so that this does not happen again. I have written that report. But at the bottom, beneath the tactical analysis and the procedural review and the recommendations for future engagement protocols, I have written something that is not in any military manual. I have written, we looked at a species that was smaller than us, slower than us, younger in the galaxy than us, and we decided they were weak. We were not wrong about the size. We were not wrong about the age. We were wrong about what those things mean. The humans did not defend that colony because it was worth defending. They burned it because it was worth the price. They sat in interrogation rooms and smiled because they had already won. They sent one man to face 40 warships, and he was not afraid, not because he was reckless, not because he was foolish, because he trusted completely, without doubt, without hesitation, that the people standing with him had done their part. That is not a military capability. That is something else, something that cannot be manufactured, something that cannot be replicated by a species that has never had to fight for every single thing it has ever had. I have faced 14 species in my career. None of them trusted each other the way humans trust each other. That is why we lost. That is why we will keep losing. If you are reading this and you are considering a conflict with humanity, don't. Not because they are the strongest, not because they are the most advanced, but because when a human smiles at you across an interrogation table with his hands bound and his colony burning behind him, he's already counting down and you are already standing on the bomb. For more HFY stories, subscribe to HFY Legends. Hit the bell because humanity isn't done yet.